How's it going all? Darby here with GenAI University, and in this video, you're going to be walked through a 90-minute free live workshop that we just wrapped up. At the beginning of the workshop, we actually had a bit of technical difficulty with ChatGPT going down, and so we did a quick pivot over to Claude with Anthropic and ran the entire demonstration of part one, the buyer's blueprint from the buyer's brief book, and creating an entire detailed blueprint. It ended up being about 30 pages of specific audience-focused language and messaging that we could take and then run with on the campaign. And the purpose of this workshop is to help give you the workflow and the skill insights that you can literally leverage in your business to create these own personas for yourself, for your clients, and demonstrate the value of any particular brand as it relates to the audience and the market that you're going to be positioning your product and service to. You might find new markets and segments that you wouldn't have considered before. You may create more refined, laser focused versions of your existing audience by implementing the workflow that we're demonstrating in this class with the market sauce method. So go ahead and check out the links below this video. Feel free to pause, run the workflow side by side. It would be helpful to have a copy of our book as well, the Buyer's Brief book, but you could also use the free Market Sauce Mentalist GPT that's in this description below to run that alongside of how we're demonstrating it. Again, this applies to Claude, ChatGPT, and a number of other large language tools and models that you may be in your business. But with that said, over the next 90 minutes, it's going to be an introduction to the workshop, and then we're going to have hour plus of deep dive walkthrough without the demonstration and showing in action how these tools will interact with each other. And so I hope you find it useful and actionable for yourself with the free tools that we're providing. And if you like the content we produce, please make sure that you subscribe to our channel and like this video and share it with some friends who you think would be valuable. With all that said, I hope you enjoy the rest of this workshop, and make sure that you grab these resources below in this video to implement the workflow for yourself. All right, everybody, good morning and welcome to today's free live workshop that we are hosting on creating customer personas with AI and creating laser targeted customer personas to focus in on our ideal target audiences and creating more engaging, more relevant, and more effective content. Great to see everybody here today tuning in with us live. And if you're catching the recording on YouTube, great to see you too. I see you in the crowd, Shelly, Roger, Catherine joining us, Isaac, some new faces and some familiar faces. It's great to see you all, Joanne, Liren, Charles, Dion, Julie. Great to see y'all. Hope everyone is having a fantastic Thursday. And we will give another minute or so for people to join in and get off to the races. We've got 90 minutes blocked off for today's workshop. We'll be walking you through a very specific workflow for identifying core audience demographics. We're also going to be covering psychographics, market segmentation, and how to craft messaging that's going to be speaking directly to these different segments of our audiences. We're going to kick things off here in just a second. As we do, everyone that is here live, please let me know where you're tuning in from and what you're looking forward to get out of this workshop. The focus today, again, is going to be very strictly on persona development and market segmentation. We will be covering additional things that you do once you identify those segments and creating additional campaigns along that line. I'm going to pull it up again and make sure that I can access that, and then we will dig in. We'll have a little bit of time overview what we're going to be covering inside of the workshop, and I'll be sharing links as well inside of the chat for those here to check it out. Let's see, cool, looking for writing scripts with YouTube, Charles, tuning in from North Virginia. Good to see you. Be nice to see ChatGPT today. Who knew the AI gremlins partied this early in the day? That's right, Julie. Joanne, hi from Costa Rica. Mother's Day there, so yeah, enjoy the Mother's Day. And wouldn't luck have it that ChatGPT is apparently falling flat on its face today on my end because, okay, so it might just be a few things. Part of working with AI is knowing how to adapt and iterate on your process whenever these tools do things. AI is going to AI, as we say. But again, some of us are able to access chat. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the introduction to the presentation, give a little bit more context for you joining us here, and then we'll dive into the actual demonstrations. And while we're going through this workshop, there is an interactive element of it to where you're going to have access to prompts to hopefully GPTs that'll work for you here while you're going through this live, and inputting information and context on your end to start to develop these personas on your own. That being said, we're going to go ahead and dive in, kick things off here. All right, y'all. So we're going to be talking about creating target audience personas with AI. And the purpose of this is to, in essence, help you with revolutionizing your own process and leveraging AI and the workflows that we're going to be sharing with you today to really get the most out of this technology. And whether we're demonstrating ChatGPT or Claude in this case, or if you use another tool, there's a very collaborative process the way that I work with these tools. And I hope that you'll find some value in use in your own approach as we've developed it, the market sauce method. And so the objective of this workshop is going to be first and foremost to creating personas and making sure that these personas that you're creating are accurate and in line, using AI to generate precise audience profiles from ideally your own existing content, customer interviews, transcripts. So we'll also be doing it just from scratch so you can see how the workflow works both ways. Going to be boosting your efficiency during this process. What we've outlined inside of our buyer's brief book with the buyer's blueprint section of that book might take a professional copywriter 3 to 4 hours of research time to go and manually find, research, interview, and put together a blueprint of that sort that is essentially the persona that you're going to be creating a marketing campaign around. And if you're not a professional marketer, that process could take you weeks to more along the lines of it never even getting done. And in terms of having a complete marketing blueprint and an understanding of your persona, because it's a very time intensive manual process. And in a lot of cases, as a business owner, you've got a number of other things to do. So you would outsource that to somebody who is a professional. And so then there's working with contractors or freelancers to do this research for you. Creating super effective marketing personas is going to help you with directly improving your bottom line and a number of different ways that you can apply this process for different insights, and ultimately using AI in the way that we're demonstrating it here to help you with uncovering new opportunities and really the language and the messaging to speak to each one of those different personas in the segments of the market that will open up new innovations on your own products or new ways that you can create and improve on what you're already creating and delivering as a product or service. In the demonstration today, I will be primarily using ChatGPT we have a custom GPT that we've built in there. I'll also demonstrate how you can approach this process inside of Claude. Both of the ones I just mentioned require a paid membership. I would suggest if you don't already have a ChatGPT 4.0 membership, that's $20 a month, I think, something along those lines. I think Claude is similar in pricing. These are both incredibly valuable tools for, I think, are staples inside of my workflow. So I'd recommend at least integrating one of these inside of this process if you aren't already. We're also going to be demonstrating how to use some of the prompts within the buyer's brief book inside of these tools so that in line with this, we're also going to be showing you how to improve, expand, and build upon these prompts and your own instructions to guide the AI down the direction that you're looking to accomplish. So whether you're doing B2B marketing outreach campaigns or you're creating direct to consumer ad campaigns for an e-commerce brand, there's a number of ways you can interact and engage with your persona once you've got the basic foundation made. And so that is where the Market Sauce Mentalist GPT as a free resource to you is going to come into play, where you could leverage this GPT and the customer insights that you're bringing to the table to create more effective targeted customer personas that will be the foundation of any go-to-market campaign you are creating. So the method that we take from Gen AI University all the way down to Market Sauce and what we're developing as a market research tool all comes down to co-creation, and how, if not just co-creation from a human to human standpoint, how can we view AI as a collaborative partner inside of the co-creation process, but keeping in mind, you are the human in charge, you're the boss, you're guiding AI towards the goal, and setting that goal is really critical for where you're at in this process. And as I've mentioned before, this is all about conversational interaction and developing really like the skills, and I say prompting here and guiding AI, but really it's more than just knowing how to prompt. Of course, a prompt is really at the end of the day an instruction. using natural language to help bridge, where you're at now to where you want to be. And AI right now is an incredibly effective prompt co-creator that you can use. And I use very often when creating prompts that you see inside of some of the more elaborate recipes and workflows that we create. And you'll see others out that are creating and producing content or workflows or resources or tools with AI, really leveraging what AI is capable of doing to build and enhance and expand upon even just simple prompting. And as you see, the conversational voice dictation guiding AI is really critical, but knowing where you want to go is of just as much importance. And so, that said, as we're going through this process, because it is a co-created, a collaborative process we want to create, but we also want to test and expand on personas. And this is very much iterative in terms of you're creating, even if you started from scratch today with your very first persona blueprint and you didn't have any customer interviews or any existing surveys, data, your personas from just how AI is helping generate these initial ideas, it's so critical to go and validate and reflect and make sure that in the real world, we're combining the AI insights we're getting and we're validating those with the real human experience. AI is great as an ideation and brainstorming partner, but if you just let AI take the wheel and run, you're going to end up at 1,000 miles ahead in a direction, but is it the right direction? And are you validating and are you directing and choosing certain checkpoints if AI needs to be checked, if it needs to be refined, if you need to give it more context, and we'll cover how to approach that here as we continue. What you're going to see throughout the workflow is defining clearly your target market and how we're using AI to help us with developing and refining that, but also going into it, establishing your goals. Like I said, what your goals are with a particular campaign or with understanding and insights inside of the context of the Mentalist GPT and the Buyer's Brief book. All of the constraints that you want to provide help hone in and help AI stay in line with the end goal in mind. And so the campaign idea that an AI might give you, if it's identified a persona and you say you have a $5 million a month budget, is going to come out a bit differently than you say, I'm super bootstrapped and I've got like $150 to work with this month. Just an example of giving those constraints as prompts, regardless of where you're at, is going to be part of the guiding process. In general, tips that we're going to be covering with just getting the prompts going is how we're going to be starting the process with the Mentalist GPT and creating a customer personas. One is defining what is the general industry and audience information. You might have who you are, what you do, how you're different. I work in this industry, and here's some like context about my product. This is who I serve. That's what we're going to be starting with as we go to start to prime our AI conversations. Determine that after running a few different persona generations, that we want to focus in are the types of personas that we're going to create based on really specific goals and areas of focus for our business. And so one of the things that as we're going through this that I find that is a really great and simple application for any of these generative AI tools is in saying, I serve this customer, I serve this type of market, this is what my business does, who is my ideal target audience? And it's going to give you some responses. And one of those responses may have been an audience that you never would have considered. That is where you can get a lot of insight and maybe challenge AI to say, hey, let's go down further down this path. And again, of course, we're going to take the information that we get from priming AI and then going and testing and validating that. But once we create a lot of context and information here, one thing we found that is really helpful for putting the data that we're going to be creating and collecting here into action is after we've created persona profiles, creating a synthesized conclusion or even a TLDR of what you've created and talked about in the chat, who the personas are, can be really helpful, especially if you're creating these in the forms of sometimes they're 10, 20, 50 page plus reports to front load the insights that you're getting and creating from any one of these threads. Because again, a lot can get lost inside of a 20-page document. And so you want to front load what are these insights and what are the action items that we're going to be taking on those insights. We'll be covering not all of the details about what AI can do, but this is really one process that you can take and you could expand on exponentially in it when it comes to how much data you have and want to use. You are going to want to look at potentially working directly with OpenAI's Playground and their API and their enterprise level support. Um, Vector storage databases, without getting too technical right now, for making sure that your own data is secure and is being referenced with accuracy. So I'm not going to get into all of the technicals of setting that type of thing up, but know that if you're looking at scaling out a large enterprise, or you have thousands and thousands of files, you might want to look at building something more custom that can be used at the larger scale inside of your organization. What we're going to be showing at a smaller, more simplified scale here is understanding different patterns and recognizing those patterns and making connections, again, that different perspective that you're going to see as we get into the demonstration and segmentation here. But also, because AI has so much broad knowledge, again, like I've mentioned, making these connections is key, and using those connections and being able to identify the connections as the humans driving these machines and deciding which direction we want to continue to move forward will then lead into what you're putting into action and executing on campaigns. And we've talked before, and as we're talking about co-creation, is getting very specific about the problems that we're going to be defining here, because once we get specific and we are like refined in our personas, we could really go narrow, deep, and create incredibly targeted messaging that is going to speak to a very niche audience. And again, in a sea where, online in our email inboxes, there's a lot of noise everywhere. The more specific you can get to who you're helping and serving a specific target market, the better your results are going to be in terms of engagement. Lastly, everything that we're going to generate as we're doing from the start, if it's just from AI, has to be validated with going out and having real conversations with real humans. Some ideas for how you can validate some of the insights AI is going to give us is by actually surveying your customers, using those surveys to refine your blueprints, assessing your current customers, and understanding if we're getting these insights about what type of behavior is driving our customers. I'm looking at my actual customer list and saying, oh, this is actually true. I'm confirming this buying behavior is consistent with what I'm seeing inside of my business. But also customer interviews and pain points. If you're doing customer discovery calls or insights, taking those transcripts, running them through the Mentalist GPT or the Blueprint persona creation workflow will allow you to take not only the interview and the transcript and get an idea that you can interact and engage with that transcript inside of an AI chat thread, but also validating those pain points, expanding on those pain points, and then going and taking those back to the customers you're interviewing and confirming it to know that you are indeed on the right track. And then when it comes to market trends, validating things through industry reports, sometimes it'll cite sources and it'll actually pull a direct link. Sometimes it'll say that this is the trend in an industry based on this report. If you're using a tool like Perplexity, always validate and confirm the content that's coming back here and from AI, and just making sure that everything is, I found that AI, even if you're searching for what are some statistics around a market trend or how can you gauge based on X, Y, or Z, at least give you an idea about what are some ideas I can go and focus in on for trends to identify and then go deeper down that specific rabbit holes. All of that said, I'm going to go ahead and retry my ChatGPT again, and we'll share with you the Mentalist GPT that we'll be using to get started and going through this process for persona development. I'm going to go ahead and share the link inside of the chat with everyone. If you can, while you're here with us here today live, go ahead and grab that and open that up inside of your ChatGPT account, just so you have it and you can pin it and you can reference it at a later date. So I think that's the vibe we're feeling this time around. We don't want to waste time watching the spinning wheel of death not load any of our accounts. Instead, we're going to use my tied with number one go-to favorite generative AI platform, Claude, for the demonstration of this workshop. The recipe that you've got access to, again, for those of us that are here with us live today, I'm going to link you a copy of the Buyer's Brief book manuscript because you showed up here with us live. But if you are not here live with us, the manuscript is going to be available at our website as well as on Amazon. And I'm going to show you with this book manuscript how this isn't really going to detract from how I'm going to be able to show you how to do this and demonstrate it. We're just not going to have the GPT to demonstrate on this call. It is what it is. How many of here, by a show of hands, yeses in the chat box, please, have used Claude, Anthropic, or familiar with Anthropic, have used Claude, or haven't used it but are considering it right now? I just want to make sure that we're not like totally brand new to Claude here. I see a lot of yeses. One haven't used Claude yet. Another have not. Well, this is going to be a good example of how a number of these other, or at least one of the other leading generative AI large language model platforms from Anthropic has brought us a tool called Claude 3.5. I use ChatGPT and Claude very heavily as mostly my top two that I go to with using these. I'm a fan of Perplexity as well. And I do have Perplexity on my list to show how we could use this for researching facts, statistics, and things that we can apply into creating personas. And so if you have used ChatGPT but haven't experienced Claude yet, then use this as a way to see where Claude is at right now. Again, these tools are evolving rapidly and always new capabilities coming out. But I will start with resharing my screen and walking through how we're going to go through this process with Claude and a live demonstration. All right. So if you've got the Market Sauce Mentalist GPT, this book is literally built into the knowledge base of that GPT. And so when you're working with that GPT inside of ChatGPT, it is naturally referencing the context of this book, which is how it starts to analyze and assess and create the personas based on what you input with that. My approach that I'm going to share with you today, and I'm going to go as step by step as I can, is how to take the prompts from the buyer's brief and how to even start the process without these prompts. In this case, we're going to be using Claude now for this demo and train it to act like your market research assistant to helping you creating these customer personas. And I'm going to be using a demonstration for an example of a game that is a part of a company that I'm involved with called Side Hustle as a demonstration. And then I would love to, while I'm doing that first demonstration, have you guys share your own business info, like who you are, who you serve, how you're different, if you'd like to be chosen or consider to be chosen for a demonstration of this workflow as we go back and refine it again. So if you got the book, the recipe starts on section 2. But before we get to the recipe, I want to open up my Claude account and start a new conversation by saying hi. So Claude, opening up my conversation, and I now have a chat thread set up that first and foremost, if you're going to be using this for research for a specific type of project, if you copy the link to this Claude thread and just save it in a project or wherever you want to make sure you reference it again, that could be really helpful if you're using and creating a lot of content with these tools, because sometimes things can get buried. And if a week goes by and you come back and you're not sure where the heck your content went, and often I just use a simple Google document for sharing information. And so because we're generating a lot of content inside of these threads, I would recommend, if you're getting really clear with who your target audience customer persona is, starting a document where you can copy and paste and save the information for easy reference. I see a few people saying that was a good tip. So hopefully you guys find that useful. And as I'm going through threads, is because sometimes we'll come up with prompts that we want to reuse, and they can easily get lost inside of a thread like this. And you'll see as we generate content that it can be a little bit overwhelming with the amount of content we're going to generate. And so what I want to start with is setting the context for what I want AI to position itself as. And so there's a few part to priming this chat thread. I use a tool called Voice In as a dictation Chrome extension. I know Macs and PCs have voice dictation built in. And so I just find that it's easier for me when I'm getting and I'm working with AI to, yes, I can type my prompts out here, but AI does not need you to be super perfect grammar every time. It can understand what you're saying to it if you just talk to it and give it your instructions. I am doing customer persona research for my business, and want you to act as an expert market researcher who understands the psychology and motivations of what drives my target audience to buy. I'm going to run through this in several different iterations so you can see how you can progress with this process using the prompts and the recipe from the book. But I want to start the way, if you were to start just from scratch, how I would approach starting to build out customer personas. I understand I'll act as a market expert researcher, so it's assuming this role now as an AI. What do you want me to talk about? So from here, AI still doesn't have any context about my brand, but I need to now, like, now I know that my Claude assistant is thinking with the hat of a market researcher. And so now, as the brand owner, or if I was an agency coming and researching this brand or anything, and I want to give it information about my product or service first, and I want to tell it to analyze my product or service to understand like who the target market is based on what I'm selling. And this, in a lot of cases, and from my very own experience with this product, it's called Play Side Hustle. We spent months of time doing customer research and talking to different people and understanding how the game mechanics of this worked. And we still like were very like not sure about who were all the different target audiences for this game and how would we create campaigns for them. Had I had AI back when we started this company, it would have taken like months of time off of the research side of things, helped us with getting our messaging for the Kickstarter page and everything up that much faster. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to this product landing page. And if you have your own product, your own service, your own anything, right? This is just a demonstration. This is not a pitch for the game. Is free online, but this isn't a pitch for the game. This is to show you how you'd go and approach this process, no matter what landing page you have access to for yourself, for a client. Just copy it, copy the context of this information. And as I can see, when I move down here, I'm just copying the information that's going to be related to customer reviews, sign up, play the game. Okay, cool. If I had information about the game, which I do, we'll build that out in part of this example. I'm just going to start the thread. Here are the details. I want to identify the top 10 market segment personas that make sense for this product. Like very point blank, I'm just saying I have this brand. Here's the details. Just identify 10 market segments based on it. And then I'm pasting that content right here. Based on it's an online game. Let's identify the top market segments. Young entrepreneurs, college students, remote workers, corporate professionals, gaming enthusiasts, small business owners, freelancers, and career transitions, personal finance enthusiasts, education and trainers. And so very quickly, I could see there's 10 different segments of the market that could use this game in some way, shape, or form. But I want to give it a little bit more context about what the game's purpose is, to have it dive a little bit deeper into what's the value that each of these segments of the market is going to be getting based on the context of the game. So now I'm going to say a little bit more context. The game is basically an improv version of Shark Tank meets Apples to Apples that you can play to stimulate creativity and have ideas. With that in mind, can you refine the personas that we would want to target based on the context of this game? And so now I'm going to give it a little bit more context about the product or service, and it's going to come back with me with another edition of those 10 most relevant audiences. So now it's creative professionals, startup founders, innovation teams and corporations, entrepreneurship students, improv enthusiasts, business coaches, consultants, hackathon and workshop organizers, product managers, marketing, advertising professionals, or game enthusiasts. In contrast to what we had above, which is Like same, but a bit different, right? And now it's throwing back some more ideas of some additional market segments that I could potentially be exploring. I could choose to go down the rabbit hole with all 10 of these. I could choose to go down the rabbit hole with just one of these. But here is a really important part of whenever you're engaging with one of these large language models is really, again, like we talked about, what's the focus of what we want this to ultimately lead to? Like, that's going to dictate the type of content that I want. If I wanted to create content for a pitch deck that I was raising funds for this game particularly, I would want to craft content and messaging and things of that nature around like raising funds and how it's going to benefit this particular segment of the market related to that goal of the brand. But before I even get there, I want to go a lot deeper on each one of these and assess it a bit more. And again, this being the first part of any sort of go to market strategy of anything with understanding who am I speaking to in the first place. There's no way that I have the time or the capacity to create full blown campaigns for every single one of these different market segments as a startup who in this case is bootstrapped, right? And if I had a big marketing team and a big budget, we wanted to go test 10 different ad campaigns on for 10 of these with 10 different creatives with X, Y, or Z, that's totally doable. Again, like the scale of what you have in terms of resources is going to dictate the direction. What I want to do now is pinpoint one specific target market and I focus in on that target market with the context I've already provided with the start of the buyer's blueprint. Because while this information is good to have right now, age 25 to 35, some characteristics, some motivations, there's a whole lot more that's going to go into making this segment of the market tick. And that's what we're going to go to create inside of the blueprint, which would then inform the language and the messaging for any type of outreach campaign that we'd make. So we could make cold emails, we could make LinkedIn posts and whatever other sort of content. This is 100% a use case for this game. It's one that I hadn't really considered doing an outreach campaign for these organizations could use the game. One of the primary segments that does sign in and play this game for free are entrepreneurial students, but also entrepreneurial startups that are training entrepreneurship in high school. I could go a number of different directions here, but I'm going to focus in and just say that would be an interesting play to see how we could plug this game in with event organizers, because that would give us a lot of exposure to new entrepreneurships and people at these types of workshops. So let's say I wanted to explore this and I wanted to connect with these hackathon or workshop organizers. The key here is this is the person we need to be connecting with. That's who we're going to expand on, build our blueprint for. So now I'm going to pause inside of Claude and I'm going to scroll down to part 2 of the book, which is part 1 is examples of the book and its outputs and what you can generate. Part 2 is the actual recipe that we'll be leveraging here to save you a boatload of time and generate these insights. So I could scroll down on the left-hand side and select the Market Sauce 9000 recipe. And we can see here, this is where we can start to go very deep on this particular segment of an audience. All right. So instructions and context, as we've been covering, are absolutely key for guiding and directing AI. But until we got to this point, we didn't really know who we were going to be targeting. We would just say, oh, Side Hustle is a great game for everyone who likes games. Couldn't sound more broad in general. But now we're going to look at what is the messaging that we could consider for creating a campaign that's targeting Side Hustle towards hackathon and workshop organizers. Inside of my buyer's brief, I'm going to start, and this is going to set the context for how we're going to continue to build on this recipe. We've given it good initial context inside of our thread for how to act. But now I want to go many steps further because I know I can, because we've developed this recipe for it. I'm going to tab back over to my Claude account. I'm going to say we want to focus on 7 hackathon and workshop organizers. So I'm going to give it, I want it to focus on this. Reference the side hustle given context above and execute the instructions below before we begin the full blueprint. And this, and just to clarify, as you're going through this process, could be said probably 15 different ways. But here is where, again, the language in the conversation as you're talking to Claude, you might find your own voice and tone that does direct it in a way that's more comfortable for you in your interaction with it. And so now what I'm doing is I'm pasting that first section of the instructions from our recipe right here and having it focus on that specific segment. So now it's saying, okay, target audience, innovative event organizers, they're seeking tools to engage, stimulate ideation, enhance team dynamics, and add unique elements to hackathons and workshops. So we got our demographics, our psychographics, our behavior patterns, and then what's the number one goal? And this is really key as we go about building any sort of blueprint out beyond this point for any persona, because the detail at which we're going to be generating these audience personas is going to be in relation to, one, like who they are as the market segment, two, what is your brand, and what do they want to get out of, like, for themselves, what kind of value are they looking to get from your brand, and what's the goal that they're looking to accomplish here, achieve this result. Then we would want to refine that before we go any step further. The goal that Claude is helping us focus in on is creating memorable, high impact events that foster innovation and collaboration among the participants. If I'm an event organizer at hackathons and workshops and I want to create memorable, high impact events that are fostering all of this innovation and collaboration, to me, I know that's something that our game does. And to them, if I can help them put on events that help them achieve this goal, and that's how I'm positioning our product, I can see a win situation here for at least opening the conversation and confirming that our game is a good fit for helping event organizers with this number one goal. And so it goes even deeper now on that. It's like, why are they aiming to build it? What industries could be served? Where is the audience located? Company size and buying intent signals. So things like if this type of person was searching online for interactive workshop ideas, hackathon planning tools, creative icebreakers for events, someone searches that and then the first thing they see is our game, Side Hustle, a great creative icebreaker for hackathons and workshop events. Like, maybe that'll catch my attention a little bit more than something that is targeting a party game enthusiast or a coach looking to use the game for their clients. So the language and messaging here is everything as it relates to our target audience and their number one goal. So now we have the product description and it's writing out more content here, giving us some content and messaging to frame it around. AI is also helping us with filling out this information to align us and get us on that track, where it's saying what are our marketing activities, brand awareness for this product and for the direction that where we want to go. To me, this makes sense. And I'm giving it the okay that we're going to move to the next step, which now that we've got the number one goal, going back to our book manuscript. And again, if you've got the mentalist inside of ChatGPT, again, because it might work here in the next 20 minutes, I'll check it again. It has all of these instructions built into it. And so if you know the format and the flow of what we're trying to accomplish here, you can tap into that right away. In this case, we're just needing to prime Claude a little bit so that it knows. And so what I like to do once I have that initial context instructions built out, and this is how I approach this workflow. You could skip this and go straight to the number one goal, but I like to make sure that I'm just hyper focused on this market and setting the business role and goal in that context, because I find personally this information helpful to reference in. So all I'm going to do is paste that in and rerun in. Before I do that, I see we have a question that's extremely relevant here. If you had a huge disagreement with some of the outputs, how would you adjust it before going on to the recipe? That's a great question, because sometimes Claude or any AI could give you something that just doesn't make sense. And so if I disagreed with something on here, and if I didn't like it, And for the sake of demonstration, we'll just rerun this and have it go again. And say I disagreed with the number one goal. I was like, that's not really what we're going for here. It's on track. I just want to see what it will do if it runs this again. So I'm just going to click refresh, and ChatGPT has the same thing. Foster, create memorable, productive events, inspire innovation, foster meaningful connections amongst participants. I don't really disagree with the direction of this. And so I'm just going to continue with this kind of context in mind. But I think for the sake of demonstration, how I would approach reframing this initial step within how I'm writing with Claude is giving it an instruction as to what I want to adjust before going on with the recipe. Okay, I'm not really sure that's the number one goal that we want to go for. The goal of our event organizers is that they actually host these events at high schools with entrepreneurship programs. And so I want the goal to be focused on that. Can you give me 10 primary goal ideas that we can choose from before we move on? And you could do this with any particular section of an output. What I want it to do in catching this, like if it's not going in the direction I want it to go, all the rest of the content's going to be skewed in the other direction. And so if I want to steer in a different way, thanks for clarifying. Claude can be very nice in your response, but also sometimes it can say, hey, I can't do this, I can't do that. We're getting good response back from Claude right now. Clarify the event. Let's refine our approach. What are some other ones that would line up with me for the number one goal in this case? Inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, enhancing practical business education, increase student engagement. I'm going to read through these: cultural creator problems, student engagement, boost participation, dynamic tools, great marketing opportunities. These are all things that you could test and build around. Now that we've got our initial target audience up at the top, and we've identified all the different market segments that we could have started with, we gave some more context, and we got a little bit more focused about the types of people we want to be creating a campaign around. We chose hackathon and workshop organizers, still pretty high level. And then we gave it some instructions about what we wanted to see. It gave us the outputs related to the number one goal that it was assigning to this persona. And we disagreed. And we said, I want to go a little bit different direction with it. So we can see 10 options here. And let me see, increase student engagement through gamified learning. This has literally been an example that we've seen a number of times for the game inside of entrepreneurship classes. So I'm going to go with that goal. Let's go with this as the number one goal and continue by refining the last outputs from our instructions accordingly. The reason I'm asking it to refine the last output is because if I'm creating this report, I want to know that the context and the information that I'm getting from it is where I want it to focus. And this is the time, this is the number one goal. It's refined this initial set for where we're going to be starting from. I'm going to copy this so that I know as I'm creating this content, I'm going to have a report done I'm going to have an easy to access way to review and reference this once the report is done. As I mentioned, we have the chat thread. I like to just keep this at the top of my document. And now that we've refocused and recentered where Claude is at and helping us with getting really detailed about this customer persona, I'm going to continue inside of my book manuscript, copy that and paste it, click enter. Now, please provide the instructions. Sometimes you just need to remind Claude that this is the direction that we're heading for our segment with side hustle. Use that and execute. I like to use the word execute when I'm giving it this sort of like instruction. So I'm saying reference this, then do that. Aha, it is. Okay, great. So I understand that as we're going through this process, there's a lot of copy and paste, there's prompting, there's building on top of these. This is the building blocks for what we would be creating, but potentially numbers of campaigns for and investing a lot of time and resources into and just take this for your own use case or example. It all starts with the buyers and the personas that we're creating and researching and identifying and understanding the market. So this is something that, as part of our entire content production workflow, we always start with. So I've done this process thousands of times now. As you build and iterate and get used to going through this workflow, you will be able to create these types of reports that say anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. For yourself, you could create these as internal reports, stuff that you provide for clients. But in general, just as part of the research and discovery process, we've gotten ourselves to really the starting point of the rest of the blueprint. Because if this was all wrong and this was not the right context that I wanted to provide, everything beyond what we're creating here is going to go in a skewed direction, like I've mentioned. But because we're lined up, we've got segment, niche, context, increasing the engagement. I'm focusing on them. And this segment, very specifically, not party game hosts on Friday game night, not corporate HR looking for after work team building activities, not startup entrepreneurs looking a way to recover from burnout. I'm looking at event organizers in the entrepreneurship space, create engaging roles, same product. And so I hope by demonstrating, at least to this point, if you take anything away from this entire process that we've gotten to so far, is that we could have gone 50 different directions with this. Understanding the goals of yourself as a business and who you're going to be reaching and the constraint to how many resources you can put towards these campaigns will all influence how many of these reports you're going to want to be generating. Also, getting to this point, you can see the motivations of this segment of the audience with much more clarity because it's here, and we can refine it and we can validate and we can take this content and use it as a reference point for creating any number of our campaigns. So now is where the rubber's going to meet the road. We've got our target audience and their personas primed, going in a bit of a modular fashion and going all the way to the end of the goals, confirming that looks good, and then pasting sequentially the rest of the prompts. I used to do every single prompt individually, and we used to do this inside of Jasper individually, one at a time. And even then, it would take an hour, 2 hours to create something like this and build it out. The reason I do it more one-shot long-form prompting now is because the prompt that we're giving it, we've structured here, is designed to give, I wouldn't mind muting if you're coming off mute. Thank you. Is getting the information out and then assessing what you want to work with and move forward on is, there's an element to the speed here that I think is a lot more value in it than if it would still take me 2 hours to do one of these reports the first time. I would rather spend my time reading through, assessing, and then taking the content and going validating it, then coming back and speeding up that feedback loop that I can take this on. So now we're starting the master buyer's blueprint. Segment analysis begins right here. It's going deeper into who this type of person is going to be. Innovative mindset, student-centric approach, results-driven, collaborative nature, needs, wants, desires, behaviors, and our goals, right? So we know that we're creating a dynamic learning environment that's inspiring. Now, here are things like topics. Topics are things that you could take. You can create blog posts, like content around this. The primary complaint, what people are working to move away from. If this is a pain point that somebody has in this position, if their curriculum is stale, I have this gut-wrenching frustration after watching students' eyes glaze over during yet another theoretical lecture on business principles. There's probably an event organizer or a teacher or someone that's putting on these types of events with entrepreneurship that has experienced this type of problem before, much as like resources, right? If you have minimal resources you're putting on an event, maybe you don't have thousands, maybe you have a tight budget, time crunch, all of the things that are complaints of this target audience, we can use in our arsenal to create content and inform our messaging as we're opening and engaging conversation in this market. And then the secondary complaints are additional things that we're going to want to address if we're looking at how do we get these or address these pain points in presenting this product or service as a solution to the goals of this segment of the market. And each one of these sections inside of the buyer's brief book has the prompts around this that you can use in reference to. And so that's part of like in going through this book and understanding this process is like knowing what section do you want to generate and when. Do you always need a full blueprint? I know that this is on the right track and I feel good about the way that everything is set, and I want to continue to move forward. And so from here, I'm simply going to continue and copy down through the overview section. And I'm just going to take it section by section at this point. 2 years ago, we were extremely limited to the length of the outputs, but that was just 18 months, 2 years ago. Now we're able to produce a much longer series of outputs. It's too fast to read it all as it's going, but if I'm generating these and I'm in my research mode and I'm watching this to understand, I'm speed reading, I'm picking out words, keywords, phrases, things that I want to get and keep, top of mind as I'm going through this, and understand this is what causes mistaken beliefs, all those things that are going into making inside of the mind of the market. When you go into causes, similar, it's just going to continue to go down. And due to time constraints, we don't have the time to go through every single section of this piece by piece. But as you can see, these prompts are the instruction, and seeing where those will fit inside of your marketing campaigns is part of the power of understanding the market sauce method works here, and just getting these segments broken down and using these insights to make more strategic decisions and spending less time and resources on going and sourcing this information, which again, if this would take you hours of your time originally, and now we're talking about just in the last 30 minutes getting to this point, we could get to this point in a matter of 5 to 10 minutes if we weren't walking step by step as it is right here. If you've ordered one of our marketing blueprints before, the process that we've got it down with automations on this front is down to 5 minutes or less, but still inside of our human quality control and making sure that the outputs are good. More details on that, you'll hear about that inside of our newsletter. As the basis for any sort of marketing campaign, you need to know who your target audience is and the personas you are generating. And just want to do a quick show of hands, as again, too much content to read here. Want to work through how to finish this prompt, and then how we'll go very quickly with the GPT prompt to start and prime this process. Any questions out there? Are you guys finding this helpful? Do you see how this process, AI is generally on point with picking up where it left off, as you can see it did there. But yeah, are you guys finding this helpful in seeing how this will progressively help you get down and really slice and dice these segments? You can do it 100 different ways. Very helpful. Super good to hear that. And this is a part I always want to call out as we're going through these, the negative statistics. Sometimes Claude actually pulls links for me. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it pulls statistics and sources a link. This is where I need to validate and verify these sort of links. Maybe there's going to be some interesting things to keep an eye out in the landscape of search and AI. But we see here, I gave it the stat that it gave me. I need to validate where the stat came from. According to this poll right here, it's following up and it's saying that this is the true. Only 41% of students feel like they have the skills necessary to start a business. It's pulling sources from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a resource that it provided for me. And so that might be where it found the resource from. I just want to find where it actually is pulled right here. Okay, I'll hide this. If it pulls, see, I don't see a number 41% pulling up here. And so this is like the fact check side that I'm like, okay, like if I'm going to just go and cite this source and I don't actually go and back up and fact check it, then like good chance I'll get called out on that. Or just cite your sources, make sure that you're pulling and validating that information. And it might have made this number up. 40% of students' school or work pipeline needs and bolstering. It might have made that 41% number up, but inside of the document, I might find another statistic that's going to help with what I would include for the statistics in a newsletter, or talk about it on as a topping point for a LinkedIn article or something along those lines. This is just doing some due diligence in the content that you're getting here and validating it especially just to highlight that on the negative statistics as a sidebar. So just make sure you're fact checking where you're getting these sources from. But that said, we're on to the last two legs of the blueprint demonstration here, where it's the solution section, then it's the offer target section. So I'm going to go with the solutions. And so now it's coming up with the fall solutions, trying to teach entrepreneurship. Like, what are they trying? And again, all the details for what each of these sections are listed out in the book. And this would all be content that you would use inside of your narrative and your storylines that you are. But like, how would you translate this information into ad copy? A great way to test this, and one we heard just last week, testing pain points and then testing that against ad dollars and verifying what pain points are the top pain points. If you want to quickly go and test this stuff, I'm going to move down to, like we mentioned, we got our secondary complaints and our primary complaints. Is the constant gnawing pressure of trying to cover essential concepts while making lessons engaging and practical? Are you like gut wrenched with the feeling of watching your students' eyes glaze over the next time you bring up another boring business, talk about business, and everyone finds it boring? If I'm calling out the pain points that I want to test against inside of my copy, I'm just going to frame, and this is just me. And then you could simply use like AID, attention, interest, desire, action, as a very common ad format or framework, problem, agitate, solution. And if I wanted to very quickly do that, you could simply just ask AI to follow that framework or provide it with a framework that you want it to follow, and it would give you copy based on what you're asking it for if you're providing those frameworks. I'll show you how to do that with the offer target as the last bit. And this is, as we've seen, we started with 10 more broad avatars or market segment personas, whatever you want to call them. And we refined that to be a little bit more specific with 10. And then we identified one for the workshop and hackathons, and we had the primary goal being innovative entrepreneurship classes. And then we're moving all the way down to creating this extensive blueprint, which we can very quickly package up into a report. Now we have the last stage, which is the offer targets, which is now based on all of this context for this blueprint. What are maybe even 10 additional subsegments of this subsegment of a market that we could consider targeting? High school business teachers and the why, forefronts of entrepreneurship, school principals and administrators, education technology creators, curriculum development specialists. All of these are different variations of different personas. But now, if I wanted to just take this and, okay, I've got all this information and now I just want to test 10 different like top problems for all of these different people, I could start to engage at this point and use it as my knowledge hub for creating the rest of that content. Do I want newsletters, topics, blogs? Just ask the AI and have the conversation with it for what you want. And the more context that you've primed it with, the better your outputs are going to be. So think about it. What do you want to get from here? Great, thank you. Now I want to create 10 different ads in AIDA format based on the secondary complaints related to the primary goal of my ideal target audience. Can you please write out all 10 of those ad variations and then have the call to action to be to subscribe to Play Side Hustle for free online at playsidehustle.com. So we have ad targeting, administrative hurdles. Tired of the red tape stifling your innovative teaching ideas? Side Hustle offers a pre-produced curriculum-aligned entrepreneurship program. That was actually something we had considered, was like creating a curriculum that makes it easy for this tool to get into classrooms. It would obviously require some work here, but again, it's like maybe that's an idea for a way that we could get into this market in that same sense. Side Hustle demonstrates a clear application right here. So now I have 10 different ads. I can go and start testing ad campaigns out very quickly. Now the world is your oyster, so to speak. What do you want to do with this content? What I don't want to do is create it all here and then forget it ever happened. As I've mentioned, like now that I've got all the content out, I'm just going to go and make sure I'm copying and pasting all the content into my demo outputs. So let's refine product description, current market activities. All right, so I'm going to go up here and I'm just very quickly, I don't spend a lot of time reading through it on this next round. I'm just going to go through here, get the content, and then I will spend dedicated time to going and refining that report and making sure it is something that I'm proud to work with and happy to put into action or create more strategy around it and taking it on to the next step of the book and the buyer's brief process, which is creating a more expanded upon version of a creative and strategic brief that will include additional USPs, value, like advertising language, and all the other things that you'd want associated with a go-to-market campaign, emails, DMs, you name it. You want to pull all the information that you're creating those campaigns around from the contents of this blueprint. But now that we've done the work to create the blueprint, we now want to build upon it and go and validate and test and get that information back from what we're putting out on the market. We've now got a 30-page report of a detailed blueprint with ad copy we can go put into action. And now, if I ever need to go and reference this, I just make a downloaded copy of it. I need to go whip up 10 very quick blog post ideas for this campaign, or I need an idea for content right now. I can go ahead and just open up a ChatGPT, click attach file to create 10 blog post outlines and newsletter ideas for my target markets. And so now, because I've just got that whole blueprint, all I need to do is upload it to a new ChatGPT thread, which in often cases it is, to help me with creating that content that I want to take at the next step. And so you may want to do a week's worth of content at a time. You may want to be planning and brainstorming and building a content schedule out. Leverage AI to helping you with referencing the knowledge that you've spent the time creating to now giving you some content ideas that you would go and take an action on. Newsletter ideas, blog ideas, things of that nature. I want to go and segment some of the market for my product or service and get a better picture and get more clear on who are some of the target audiences that I could be connecting with on this. I'm going to show y'all how to use that mentalist GPT that I shared with you at the beginning. If you go to marketsauce.ai/mentalist, that will direct you right away to the mentalist GPT, which, to bring things full circle, has the book that we've been teaching copies and paste prompting on to get these personas hyper segmented built into it. And ChatGPT, in a lot of cases, can assess a website and it has a lot of understanding of context on the internet. So say, assess the brand, play sidehustle.com, and create a list of top 10 personas in our market segment. So to assess this, let's start by identifying. Cool. So likely provides X, Y, or Z. So right now, ChatGPT is actually starting with a lack of context. And so just to emphasize the point of what I'm providing here is still going to be of, let's just say, I don't want to just skip over the context providing by going the easy route here. That's the context. I'm going to say, no, research side hustle on Amazon and online for context. Now you see, I told it to search online, play side hustle. Highlighting this very quickly is that it's going in a completely different direction that I want it to go to because I didn't give it the right context. I was prompting it and not giving it the proper context to begin with. So now I'm just going to do a quick reset, go back to my Market Sauce Mentalist. And for the sake of just, again, if you have a brand brief information about, let me see where it is here. Existing information about a content, product, or service, you just copy and paste that in. I'm going to say here, playsidehustle.com, begin analysis. So now give it more context about what the game is. Again, this is the same prompt I used earlier with Claude. So I'm seeing what it's giving me here. Creative professionals, entrepreneurs, and startups. And now we're back to the kind of the refinement of this whole process, and had a few interviews with them about what they were looking for and how we could position Side Hustle to help them win. I could take that and I could upload that transcript, and I could leverage the transcript to then create another version of this market segment report. We can keep researching AI starting as a start, like from square one with no additional data or context. is going to help us get 80% of the way there to opening those conversations with much more clarity and confidence that we're speaking the right language to the target market. But also, do not forget to go and have those real conversations and validate the information you're getting, and then refining the blueprints that you're creating over time so that as you continue to produce more and more campaigns, you get more data and insights in, your blueprints and your marketing campaigns are going to become that much more rock solid. And you're tapping into these different GPTs, these different AI tools to be able to take those blueprints and save a ton of time in creating initiatives that are targeting those personas right out the gate once you go through and have these reports set and squared up. Everything starts with the persona, who you're reaching to inside of your target market, creating those blueprints, providing the right context as a brand, and then using this information to guide how you are looking to get ahead of trends in the market or assessing your language and how you're speaking directly to that target segment of your market, and using all this information as a way to create, innovate, and grow and expand your product line as a business as you're creating more additional products and value for your customers and services. I hope you guys found this workshop helpful and useful in seeing how you could go about using Claude as well as ChatGPT and the Market Sauce Mentalist GPT and the Buyer's Brief book for helping you with creating these hyper-targeted, focused personas that you could speak directly to as if you're getting inside of the mind of your market. We've got about 30 minutes of time here, open floor. We're right at the top of our 90-minute block for this workshop. So I understand if anyone has to bounce and leave. But for those that are here live with us, any questions? Otherwise, here are links to the workshops in the book so that you've got it. And we do have a special right now that we are releasing for our Market Sauce Revolution membership, which is just in its early stages of rolling out, for where we are growing a community of practice for those inside of the GenAI University and just coming into GenAI University and all of our content and our trainings for working together inside of workshops, interactive implementation events, and hackathons to put these ideas into practice, to learn, to create, and to innovate additional workflows and resources that support you with growing and scaling your business with AI. Those details can be found on our website. And I'll link all of those contents below as well as inside of the document for additional resources. But we are also providing these done for you blueprints and buyer briefs as a service, totally custom to you and your business. Our platform is still in development, rolling it out to our early adopters right now for making this whole self-service so that you don't have to spend. The fact is, a lot of people that do go through these workshops still don't necessarily have the time to do it on their own and would rather just work with us to help implement them faster. So usually it's a 1 to 2 day business day turnaround for these as a done for you service. And that will only get faster as we continue to refine and develop on this process. So questions, final thoughts, insights, or otherwise that you pulled away from today that you'd like to share that you think you found useful from the workshop, I'd love to hear it. And also what you're going to be putting into action. Of course, we'll be continuing this conversation inside of the community. And I hope you guys all, find new and innovative ways to use this workflow. This replay, which you may be watching right now, depending on where you are, is going to be on YouTube, I believe, first and foremost. And we'll be sending out an email once it's ready. Thank you all for joining us here today. Again, I am Darby Rollins from GenAI University, founder and CEO. This has been the Market Sauce workshop on how to create laser-focused target audience personas with AI. Thank you all for joining us here live. Make sure to go ahead and check out our content and resources at genaiuniversity.com, as well as marketsauce.ai for done-for-you blueprints and briefs. And subscribe to us on YouTube for updates and notifications and more as we continue to produce more content around the world of leveraging AI for business growth and success. All right, everybody, keep calm and AI on. See you on the other side. Cheers, y'all.